Hello there, Rhemma Payne. It's
Hey.
very nice to have you here. I am in conversation with Rhemma because Rhemma was my first graduate student in my S2S program. And Rhemma and I conquered the world in that relationship. And I just wanted to hear her perspective on it because it's been a good year now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a good year now since Rhemma and I have worked together. So this is kind of longitudinal. This conversation we're going to have right now is going to be not longitudinal. So Rhemma, can you take us back and talk to me about what prompted you to work with me and what did you think I could help you with?
Yeah, definitely. So thank you for having me. This is fun to reflect on the past year. I recall, I feel like I was putting out feelers, not even feelers, I won't call it that, in the Facebook group, just kind of feeling lost and wanting to pursue a different kind of research methodology. Had somewhat support from my committee, but also kind of like you're on your own type of thing if you want to do this. And so I was intrigued by qualitative research, but specifically critical qualitative research. And I believe someone recommended your book, your foundational book, just taking you through linking, aligning your method with your, theory, or just all the sections, right? I think you had activities in your book. So it was from that, but you also replied to one of my questions. And so I put it together. I was like, this is the author of the book, right? And just kind of seeing the interaction. So I think from there, I definitely had a lot of confidence in just your responsiveness and freely kind of giving of your input and things like that. But from reading your book as well, I was like, that definitely drew me to want to find out if I could get more individual kind of coaching from you, and seeing that this seemed like your realm. And just my interactions with you online gave me that comfort to reach out.
That's amazing. It wasn't too long ago from when we started working together that I was thinking about mentoring, and basically in that iteration, you were one of my first cohort for S2S, and I had a faculty group and a graduate student group, and you were my first group, first graduate student group. So you essentially also offered me the gift of saying, like, this is the path you should, move towards as well, because of the way you received my help. So I just wanted to give that back to you, because I was at a point where I was thinking, like, I really want to do this, but is this going to be helpful? Because I want to put together something that is a very different type of coaching than what everybody else has going on. And I felt like I can teach skills all day long, which is what I do. But the thing that makes my classes different and everything else different is that I'm attending to the whole human. And can I do that as a coaching? And will people understand the value of it and want it? Or do they just want, like, help me publish this paper or copy edit this dissertation? Is that what they want? And this would be like, no, I don't need this, So you gave me the confidence to move forward by saying, no, I want this. I will figure out how to make this happen, but I want this. So that was really good. What would be some concerns you would have when you were looking for an academic coaching or consulting that would prevent you from working with them?
That's a great question. When I think of, I don't necessarily think I had these concerns because, like I said, I had interacted with you enough to kind of have a comfort. But the first thing that comes to mind is, I guess on my end, not knowing that I really have the questions. So would I get the value out of it, not knowing really what I needed? And for me, I think I quickly found out your intuitive kind of approach is also what really helps, right? Because I didn't even know the questions I needed to ask, if that makes sense. So I could see that being a challenge for folks of, like, I know I need this thing, I need support, but right, like, just what does that look like? And you already had a framework, the contemplative exercises, the things that help me really refine and get focused. I didn't need to know what the questions were. I just needed help, right? So I could see that being a concern, but definitely I would say the asset that you bring is that intuitiveness of, even as you were talking to me in that first, I don't even think it was the first session. I think it was the finding out if we were going to work together. I think I gained so much from that. I remember telling you, like, I felt like this was the program. And, it was like, oh my gosh, I got so much from that because of just being in tune, and you were just kind of intuiting what I needed. That was huge to see, okay, this is the right thing. I'm following this for a reason. And I don't need to know the exact questions. I just know I needed support in
Mhm.
doing what I wanted to do. So
That's awesome. That's so good to hear. So I already know this, but I want to ask this more formally so other people who are listening will know. Well, Rhemma at the moment when we're recording is going on job interviews to look for a faculty job in counselor education. That is Rhemma's work, and she has done a critical autoethnography for her dissertation. And so what I am going to ask you next is going to sound like in very obvious because I'm very connected to what you're doing and I know how you're doing, but I want us to, those people who don't know your work and to be able to have an insight as to where are you now with your work. So the question I want to ask you is, were you able to use the information you gained for our time together in your work? And if so, in what way?
yes, I was trying to wait till you finish to be like, yes, I know. Definitely from the framework, my conceptual framework that I don't want to say blew my committee away, but I'm still proud of it. I like looking at it. They like looking at it. It's visually appealing, so it made me want to return to it more, but also connecting all the elements and then going back to that each time I add a piece. Does this really fit here? Or am I just adding it? Really kind of helps with the flow. And really throughout my dissertation, you introduced me to Dark Feminism. That's been anchoring. I have a Sankofa bird that I'm wearing. All of Etsy folks are getting all my money because, yeah, it's just that was through Cynthia Dillard and introducing me to her work and body of work, and just that closely aligned. And so brought that into the conceptual framework, and then everything, all the other pieces helped me organize all the sections, all my proposals. And so right now I'm working on the final study. I've, got IRB approval. That was a process that I don't even, I don't want to say I don't know how it went. Like, I just know it was because everything was aligned. And so when it came to meticulously kind of outlining all the steps, there was nothing that I did or added to my dissertation that wasn't intentional and purposeful.
Yeah.
And I could see how that is so important as you're going through answering those questions. Like, there's a reason I'm making every choice I'm making.
Yeah.
And that I definitely attribute to that conceptual framework that helped me weed out the things that didn't fit, even just trusting my intuition. I'm like, this is rubbing me the wrong way. I don't know why. And going to the literature and the body of work and say, oh, okay, that's why, because it's oppressive, right? And just seeing how so much I was able to bring in both of those, the kind of knowledge, but also that intuitiveness of, yeah, something doesn't fit. Let me go back to this framework and see. So, yeah.
What people don't know is that Rhemma put together her IRB and came back and said, what? IRB gave me barely any revision. It got approved. Well, how does that happen? She was super surprised that happened. And the conceptual framework, Rhemma, that you're talking about, I named it a little different name after that, because what I found was happening, whereas with you, I had a lot of time to really build that relationship and get more connected to you to understand how to help you come up with that. In second and the third cohort that I had, so after you, we had two more cohorts. So the second and the third cohort that I had, when I started telling, this was the second cohort, when I started telling the second cohort, do a conceptual framework, put that, through some sort of visual way, they just gave me like a very performative piece, like a studenting, this is the teacher, I know how to student, so I will student for the teacher. And it was sterile and I couldn't feel people in there. And I realized, how can you? Because they have a understanding of what a conceptual framework is. They're just giving
Mhm.
that understanding. So I changed the name. I call it MAP now, where
Yeah.
M stands for moments that matter, and I help them like trace, which you trace too, moments that matter. A stands for all encompassing awareness, which is part of some of the homework I had given you, and P is for purpose driven. And
Ooh,
so
okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
we end up looking at that homework and then doing some qualitative analysis of things to then develop the map. And map is like a journey, map with the
Uh-huh.
word is a journey, map is marking, map is plotting, map is thinking you are here, map is thinking you can be somewhere else. So it's been very interesting to see how it has unfolded. But as far as I know, it's essentially me helping you understand your purpose.
Yes. I love that. I love the P in that. I love the aspect of the map because you can always retrace. And to me, that's what I was describing with the IRB is like, I know how I got here. And so it was easy to tell them every step. It
Yeah,
wasn't like, what?
yeah.
Just sending it. Yeah. And so, yeah, just every step of the way being that clear of like, I know why I made this decision because there's maybe a decision point on the map where it's like I had to make a choice.
Yeah.
So I think that's a perfect way to frame it.
And then, like because there was this map, what was happening with people was it was just, and for you too, it was just, helping them awaken to their purpose. And when I say purpose, I don't mean research purpose. Of course, it's also research purpose. I mean purpose of being on earth. I mean purpose
Mhm.
of being this human being in this time, in this body, in these spaces. And then we can make it nice for academia and figure out what the academic language we need to put on it. But mostly it was because I didn't want anybody to feel like they have to force fit themselves into some academic structure and leave parts of themselves out of that and not be a full human being. And I got to witness your narrative arc of your homecoming, coming back to yourself and claiming all parts of yourself to do your work. So it was a super high honor to be in the front row of that journey. So let me go a little bit granular and ask you, what specific issues did we discuss, created the most lasting impression on you and shifted something for you?
Ooh. First thing that popped up was how to, I don't know if I want to say defend, but, kind of the scripts kind of against resistance or even just preparing. Some of those resistances didn't come up because just outlining things so clearly, but some that, we kind of were prepared for just based on some feedback I had gotten going into my work with you. Um, that stands out to me because I think each step of the way, even just rehearsing with you, I realized like each time I got more and more grounded and I know why I'm doing what I'm doing. And so that allowed me to change the language. I know you offered language, but then kind of putting it in my own voice and what that really sounds like for me, and then also feeling really rooted. Like I know I can defend every single part of
Yeah.
my dissertation. And outside of the actual formalized defense, I know I can justify everything because of the work. And me practicing getting comfortable just saying like this is why I'm not doing that. Or so I think that segues into the cultural aspects of even introducing me to different theories and ways to approach research, right? Epistemologies that I hadn't considered or, throughout my coursework never were exposed to. Even
Yeah.
just introducing me to other Black women scholars, I think um, that started a quest for me to kind of look through that. So I felt really just prepared, doesn't seem strong enough, like just really, I don't know why I'm thinking of weapons, but we'll go with it. The imagery of like, I had a lot and, I didn't have to use every weapon, but I had a lot. with me that felt, going into any conversation, that nothing could really shake me. There could be considerations, and so I wasn't rigid or like, you know, in a forceful way, but it definitely felt like, okay, if something was going to steer me away, I had a preparation or something to share for it, and that felt good.
What I hear you say is that you had somehow transitioned into somebody who was a super confident critical scholar.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds great. I'll take that in. But yeah,
You
yeah.
crafted a badass confident scholar identity,
hmm
which is awesome. I mean,
Yeah.
I hope I'm not putting words in your mouth, but
No, that's because that's what I was thinking of, like this, the imagery I'm kind of getting now is like arrows. I don't know a lot about fighting, things like that, but there is that, yeah, badassery, if you would say that, of kind of having,
yeah,
'cause you kind of have to, know what you're doing. You're walking around with this, like,
yeah.
yeah.
And you were being congruent with yourself too, and you know, I don't think you hide this. You're somebody of faith, you're a woman of faith, and you're very strong about that. And you had a sense and obligation to stay spiritually correct as well, and stay spiritually congruent as well. And you and I don't share the same faith, but it didn't really matter. It was still something that we could talk about. And then we worked on, like, what is the most divine expression of you, what is the most sacred expression of you.
Definitely. I mean, it touches me because I remember, I think you called that out of me, like, in a question of like, I don't know how you could not bring in your spiritual identity, because I have really had up to that point really separated that, both in the counseling field, it can be taboo, but also academia. I'm like, yeah, you just don't talk about that. But after you reading some of my work, you're like, I just don't see how you could not.
Yep.
So that really touched me, that we don't have to share the same faith, but you recognize that in me.
Yeah.
Again, that intuitiveness of like, it looks like you're trying to keep this out, and everything I'm reading from you has something. I think I was posting scriptures or song lyrics. There was something that you're like, I don't know how you could not bring that in. So, I mean, now I think spirituality is in my title. Like, it's just, it's definitely there. It's up front.
Look, you just made this like a little passing thing. Now I think, I mean, let's pause. Now I think spirituality is in my title of the dissertation. And before that, I wasn't bringing it in. I was thinking it's something that I just need to separate. Now it's on my title. The first thing they see is spirituality in my title.
Yeah,
That's a pretty big deal.
it is.
Freaking big deal, because it wasn't even something in the realm of your possibility. And I just think you woke up to your own power, basically. I held the space and you gave me permission to, you know, spark it, but the work was yours. I held the space, but you were awakening to your own sacredness,
Mm.
basically. So, I mean, you have answered it, but I want to ask you to see if there's anything else you want to say on what results, changes, or shifts have you seen in yourself and your work based on our time together? And I think you have already said things about being more confident and integrating more of yourself into your work, and having a way to justify your work. Those are some of the things you have already touched on. But are there other things you want to add to, like, shifts and changes you've seen in yourself?
I would just add a future in research that maybe I wouldn't have gone into this with. And whatever that looks like, whether it's just independent, myself, or connected somewhere, I don't feel like that was maybe in my realm of possibilities before. And maybe it would have been just something I would have thought I had to do, but this intrigues me because of the type of work I can do when it's congruent to who I am.
Yeah.
Doesn't feel as taxing. It's still hard work, but there's things that excite me about returning to this work, or exploring other things, or collaborating with people that I don't feel like I would have had before. And so that's kind of given me a future beyond dissertation, seeing my work as valuable, seeing my contribution as valuable to the field. Yeah, I don't know that that was the connection I was making before.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Now let me focus it a little bit on the process. So I want to ask you, what part of the process did you like most in our working together?
Ooh, there was a lot of elements. Definitely the time together, the actual scheduled time. I appreciated the comments on the feedback on my writing and work, just encouragements and things like that. But I feel like when I really think of the time, even whether it was reviewing the work or processing where I was then, giving me strategies, um, talking through the steps that were to come. That's, yeah, if I had to pick one, that's what I would pick, that actual time together that
Yeah,
we had.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. No, I understand that. That's, I mean, time is the thing that is so invaluable, and to have time for somebody to pour into your work is definitely something even I would appreciate if somebody I was getting mentored by did that with me as well. Yeah. Um, so what would you say are the three biggest benefits of working with me?
The support and guidance, this probably is going to overlap in the other areas, but just your experience and how freely you kind of give that. And when I say freely, I kind of mean even just in the overflow of how much you give. I think you also really model well protecting your time and space and exhibiting choice in that. And it's not freely because I owe people this or they can take my time. The intentionality, I think that when I'm with you, it's like it really felt like, okay, she is completely here with me. And so that's what I mean, like that kind of overflow I felt, that you were prepared or kind of coming to that space ready to pour type of thing.
Mhm, mhm,
I'd say the second thing is just even just your knowledge base of different scholars is
mhm,
so vast that it just naturally kind of that connecting point to connecting me to people or just introductions or just people in your sphere that I bumped into because I was in your sphere, like to
mhm,
me that kind of was another benefit.
mhm,
The third is really just the type of feedback that you give, directive, also always going back to that anchoring, that map, and just understanding your process and how you kind of work through, I don't want to say evaluate it, but how do you sift through taking out, editing yourself, and kind of keeping the salient parts that are so focused. So I feel like I was able to glean from that as well, just seeing some of your processes and whether you explain them or just witness them from being kind of in your presence. Um,
that's
that would
very
be three if I had to pick. Yeah.
no, that is super humbling to hear. Um, so we also added wellness sessions into the program, and you had wellness session with Dr. Paul Maxfield. How did you respond to the added wellness session? What was your experience like?
Well, it was definitely, and call all of these parts a bonus. So yeah, I don't know if that's just how I looked at it. But when I think of those sessions, like these checkpoints of, especially for me, and I think it can be like when you talked about the student teacher getting in that role and lose myself in that experience. So I really looked at those sessions as being able to not have to think of, okay, what is this that I have prepared or what's the next logical step? But he really helped me with the alignment, just even just wholeness of self
Mhm.
and what parts was I attending to or not attending to in order to do this research. And that, although it's kind of even what I'm studying, was very easy for me to lose track of because I
Yeah,
can
yeah.
be kind of goal oriented. Let me get this done, or I want to reach this milestone. But him doing an overall assessment, seeing how the pieces go together, it felt like that's where he was holding the space. He certainly had feedback about approach, but he really kept it for the wholeness of self. How are you? And the wellness part. so that I wouldn't lose that, trying to be a good student or a good STS, S2S mentee. Like I think I could fall into any of those roles
Yeah, yeah,
and just start going through the process and not experience it.
yeah, yeah.
So those I felt like slowed me down enough to look at areas of wellness that we had discussed and make sure that I'm still doing that for myself.
I didn't know, to be frank, I didn't know exactly what the wellness sessions would look like because you were my first round, so Paul and I were saying, like, okay, we'll start with a wellness assessment. So that one we agreed, but we didn't agree on what the second and the third meeting needs to look like. We didn't agree on that. So we then I then left it to Paul's own wisdom to guide himself, whatever way. And pretty much everyone who's worked with him has said that was perfect. That is exactly what I needed. It was unstructured for the second and the third one, but it was customized to whatever the person needed in those moments. So I thought that was really cool that it had a chance to pause, a chance to reflect, a chance to collect, a chance to ask questions. And then he obviously asks a lot of curious questions that make you think. It's really,
Yes, definitely.
it's super
Yeah.
annoying, super annoying. Like he'll ask like a sort of strange question, and then all of a sudden you can't think anything else other than just that question. Going, wait, why didn't I
Yeah.
think of that before? Wait, now I have to figure out an answer to this question. Super annoying.
Yes.
But it is also what has helped me in my career. He met me when I was starting my career as an assistant professor and has been together with me till now, and I'm full now. And so what I wanted to do was share all my resources for that to the people that I was mentoring, and he's my resource and my support system. So I wanted to share that with you all.
Yeah.
Okay, so if somebody is trying to think about joining S2S and maybe they are on the fence about it, are feeling a little ambiguous about it, what would you say to them?
I'd say do it. And because it's beyond maybe even just the project you're working on now. You might be able to get through what you're working on or, piece together resources. But for me, I feel I'm going to use map because now I'm just in love with that. I have a map that I keep with me. Like this doesn't go away after dissertation. So the value for me, I think, of having a career, or like I said before, even seeing a future is invaluable. So I could have probably gotten through dissertation. I maybe could have gone a different route or, pieced together some other help. But now to have this very clear vision of who I am and as a researcher and who I want to be, how I want to make an impact, it's so funneled and it's shown over time. I mean,
Yeah.
approval rates of going through this process. I mean, I'm documenting it. The dates, it doesn't make sense. It's remarkable. But again, the clarity I have, even if someone did go back in the archives and question it, I would be like, I know at every point why I made a decision. So having this kind of basis for wherever you are, I think is well worth it because you're going to apply it to everything you do in the future. You're going to know why you're doing what you're doing. You're going to know how it fits in your overall scheme. Yeah, it just, for me, I wouldn't have known that then, but knowing that now, that's what I would tell to people
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
yeah, I thought I just wanted support for my dissertation, but it's anchoring me in so many ways that I feel like I'm standing out. And even through this job process, like there's just things of how I know what I'm aligned with, that I'm not just answering questions of, oh, what's your research interest? Like there's a very definite trajectory that I can map out.
Mhm.
Should I want to share it, or if I just want to give them a nugget, I
Yeah.
know that I know.
Yeah.
So
That's awesome. That's awesome. And you have sort of embodied S2S. So S2S, for people who don't know, is multivalent. It can stand for struggle to strength, but it can also be from strength to strength. And I think you've journeyed both paths. You've
yes,
journeyed the struggle to strength path, and now you're journeying the strength to strength path. So I think like when you got to me, there were some struggles, and then we made those struggles, converted them, transmuted them into strengths. Like what you thought was struggle was actually your strength, but a lot of deficit thinking around the world made you look at those things as if something was wrong with you. And we're like, no, none of this is wrong with you. We're doubling down and making you fully you, and making you take up as much space, use as much voice as you want to use, and then that was strength. And then we moved from S2S to strength. And you, my friend, have moved. Every step since then has been a strength to strength setup, whether it be your IRB approval, whether it be your dissertation, whether it be your proposal, whether it be getting job interviews and, solid R1 universities in your program, top ranked programs in your field, and you're getting interviews in there. So this is nothing but strength to strength. And I find it super interesting that we spend all sorts of time talking about your critical autoethnography and all the ways you can write it skillfully. And it's so funny, these interviews I do. I've worked with people to help them develop their skills, and they all go back to the map. They're like, the map was everything. The map. And it's just, I'm like, okay, all right, okay. I mean, everything else happened. We had talked about the pragmatic, this is how you write autoethnography. This is how you set up a scene. This is how you transition. These are some of the things. Sometimes you have to pause. This is too hard,
Yes.
And we did all that technical strategic work. But I asked you what stands out, and you're like, the map. Everything else flows from the map. So the map.
Yeah. Isn't that funny? Yeah, to me, that's the anchoring part, or that the part I can keep going back to far beyond. Here we are a year later, and I can always go back to that. It feels like that thing I have. But yeah, thinking of the strength to strength and all that, I was smiling because my original dissertation title was The Sunken Place, which was so morbid. And by our work together and Darkened Joy is the shortened title. So it's just like, there's a joy I found in this process that never would have thought connected to writing a dissertation. For me, a predominantly white institution, like never thought that would be my experience, but even just that strength that came out, it's like, I can talk about difficult things, but I don't have to be in like the sunken place. It's joy. I'm pulling from joy. So even just in the transformation of my title, you saw that I was starting to reflect a different narrative from our work together.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Your work is important and sacred. I'm so glad and honored to have crossed paths with you, and super honored that you trusted me, because you were one of the first graduate students that signed up with me. So I'm super honored that you trusted me. Thank you so much for taking your time and talking to me. Thank you.